name is Lena, and the moment I saw the pregnancy test turn positive, I knew I had ruined my marriage, and not because of the baby, but because of who the father might be. I stood in that bathroom with the test in my shaking hands, and I did the math. The way you do math, you are desperate to get wrong. And the numbers gave me no comfort. The window was too wide, and the overlap too real. It could be Ethan's, or it could be his. I set the test on the edge of the sink, sat down on the cold tile floor, and for the first time in months, I was completely and brutally present in my own life. Outside, the city was already waking up. Garbage trucks, a dog somewhere, and someone's alarm bleeding through the walls. Ordinary Tuesday sounds, the sounds of a world that had no idea it had just cracked open beneath one woman's feet. Oh, how did I get here? That's the question, isn't it? Not the one with the easy answer. The gin, the bar, and the stranger with the quiet eyes. That part is simple. That part took only one night. But the real answer took 2 years. But before we continue, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on where you're watching from. Let me tell you about my marriage before I tell you about the night that ended it. Ethan Cole and I met at 24, married at 27, and by 31, we were two people sharing a home the way you share a waiting room, politely, carefully, and without ever quite looking at each other. There was no single moment I could point to, no explosion, no betrayal, and no dramatic line crossed, just erosion, the slow, quiet kind that doesn't announce itself until one morning you realize the thing you were trying to hold has already gone. He worked late, and I stopped asking why. I made plans without him, and he stopped noticing. We slept in the same bed with 8 inches of space between us that felt, on the worst nights, like an ocean. I told my friend Miriam once that I felt invisible in my own marriage. She gave me the sympathetic look of someone who didn't fully believe me, because from the outside, Ethan and Lena Cole looked fine. Nice apartment, 2 incomes, and all the correct components of a life. What no one could see was that I had been quietly disappearing for 2 years, and nobody, not even my husband, had noticed. The night of the argument was a Tuesday. It was about nothing important, a canceled dinner, a prior commitment, or in the usual surface battle covering the real war underneath. What Ethan was really saying, you don't prioritize us. What I was really saying, there is no us anymore, and you haven't even noticed. But neither of us said those things out loud. By 9 o'clock, I had my coat on, and I was out the door. The bar was called Loon. I had walked past it 100 times and never gone in. It was quiet. Low lighting, soft jazz, the kind of place designed for people who needed somewhere to exhale. I ordered a gin and tonic and stared at my phone and thought about calling Miriam and didn't. I didn't want advice. I didn't want someone to tell me marriages went through phases. I wanted, just for a few hours, to be unknown. You look like someone who just won an argument they didn't want to win. I turned. He was sitting 2 stools down, in dark eyes, a face that took a second to arrive at. Not immediately striking, but quietly, persistently attractive in a way that built the longer you looked. He was holding a glass of whiskey and looking at me with unhurried, genuine curiosity. I didn't win, I said. Ah, he tilted his head. Worse then. His name was Marcus. In the city for work, property development. Vague enough that I didn't press. Leaving Thursday. He had the easy manner of someone who doesn't perform warmth, but simply has it. And he asked me questions and actually listened to the answers. We talked for 2 hours. About the city, about work, about his sister in Cape Town who he said was funnier than him by a significant margin. He made me laugh, really laugh, the kind that catches you off guard, for the first time in longer than I could remember. No, I ordered a second drink, then a third. My wedding ring was on my finger the entire time. He either didn't see it or chose not to say anything. And somewhere in the warm blur of that third gin and tonic, sitting with a man who was looking at me like I was someone worth looking at, I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been wound tight for so long I had stopped recognizing it as tension. I felt seen. Just that. Just simply, dangerously seen. I will not dress it up. I made a choice. One I cannot walk back, cannot reframe, cannot make smaller than it was. It was a choice born of loneliness and too much gin and a marriage that had been guttering for months. And none of those things are excuses. Only context. The decision was mine. We took a cab to his hotel. In the morning. And the other side of the bed was empty. No note, no number. The ice in the bucket on the dresser had melted overnight into still, clear water. I dressed in the gray early light, took a cab home. Ethan had already left for work. I stood in our bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Then I made the second decision, the one that would cost me far more than the first. I would carry this alone. It had happened in a separate world, and it would stay there. I told myself that for 5 weeks. The pregnancy test had been Miriam's idea, accidentally. She'd mentioned in passing that she'd been late, the panic of it, the spiral. And something in the way she described it planted a small, cold seed of awareness in me. I had been tired, more than usual. I bought the test on a Thursday afternoon. I tucked it in my bag the way you tuck away something you're hoping to lose, and let it sit there for 4 days, then 6:47 on a Tuesday morning. Cold tile, shaking hands, 1 minute, 40 seconds. 2 lines. The math was brutal and simple. Ethan and I had been together, truly together, once in the past 6 weeks. A careful, tentative reconciliation after the argument, both of us reaching for something. Once. Marcus had been 5 weeks ago. The window overlapped. And here is what no one tells you about a secret this size. It doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in stages, each one worse than the last. First the fact of it, then the implications, unfolding slowly, then the faces, Ethan's face, his mother's face, Miriam's, my own face, in that mirror, in that merciless morning light. I thought about telling the truth, and I held the thought carefully, turned it over, examined every edge of it. And then I thought about losing Ethan, not the distant version who barely saw me, but the real one, the one I'd married, the one who appeared in unguarded moments and made me remember why I'd said yes. I thought about what the truth would cost, and I put it down. That was my third mistake, and the worst one. I told Ethan on a Friday evening, made his favorite dinner first. An unconscious instinct toward softness, toward cushioning something. He set the test on the table in front of him and stared at it. Then he looked up at me, and his face changed. Something carefully held simply released. His eyes went bright. He reached across the table and took my hand in both of his, with a grip that said everything his words hadn't been saying for 2 years. "Now, Lena," he said, just my name, just that. I had forgotten what it sounded like when he said it like that. I smiled. God help me. I smiled back. In the weeks that followed, Ethan became someone I had to consciously remind myself I knew. He came home earlier. He asked real questions. Not the performative, "How was your day?" that had become white noise, but actual questions that required actual answers. He put his hand on the small of my back when we walked. The old gesture. The one from the beginning. He built a spreadsheet of obstetricians, ranked by patient reviews. He is that kind of man when he is paying attention, and every morning I watched him fall in love with the idea of this child, our child, in his understanding. And the guilt was not a pang. It was a tide. It came in, and it came in. Every morning I rehearsed it. "Ethan, I need to tell you something before we go any further, before this goes any deeper." Every morning I chose silence, but silence has a sound if you know how to listen. And I was about to learn that Ethan had been listening the entire time. It started with a small thing, a comment I made about a restaurant, a joke about pregnancy cravings. and I used the wrong timeline. Off by a week. Ethan corrected me gently, more confused than suspicious. I laughed it off and changed the subject. He let me. But that night I lay beside him in the dark and ran the moment back over and over, checking it for damage. Had he noticed? Had he filed it away? The paranoia was new and it was relentless. Every glance that lingered a second too long, every question with a slightly different weight than it should have. When I was reading him the way you read a room you suspect is no longer safe, and then Miriam posted the photograph. A birthday dinner, 2 weeks before everything. The date was clearly visible in the caption. One day after the Tuesday I never spoke about. In the photograph, I was laughing at something, leaning across the table, completely unaware I was providing my own alibi, or destroying it. Ethan had liked the photo. He'd seen the date. I noticed him that same evening, scrolling his phone with a deliberateness that wasn't casual, not killing time, searching. I asked him what he was looking at. He said nothing, just work. Set it face down on the counter. Face down. He never set his phone face down. I went to bed and lay rigid in the dark and listened to his breathing for 2 hours, trying to read it like a language. Even. Steady. Controlled. Too controlled. Something was wrong. I could feel it the way you feel a change in air pressure before a storm. Not the storm itself, just the warning. The world going very still. I told myself I was paranoid. I was not paranoid. I saw Marcus on a Wednesday. I was leaving my office building at lunch, head down, absorbed in a client email. And I nearly walked directly into him on the pavement. We both stopped. The city kept moving around us. He looked surprised, and then, almost immediately, not surprised. In a sequence too quick to fully understand in the moment. "Lena," he said. "Marcus." I kept my voice even. "I thought you were leaving. You said Thursday." I extended the contract. A pause. A few months. Months. The word dropped into my chest like a stone into still water. "I thought about reaching out," he said. "After. I didn't have your number. I wasn't sure it was a mistake," I said. "Flat, clean, final. It shouldn't have happened. I'm married." He looked at me. "I know." "Then you understand why this is the last time we speak." Something crossed his face. Not offense. Not hurt exactly. More like the expression of someone who knows something you don't and is deciding whether to say it. He said nothing. "Are you all right?" he asked instead. Such a simple question. The genuine weight of it was almost unbearable. "Fine," I said. "I'm fine." I turned and walked back into my building. Stood in the elevator with one hand flat against the cold metal wall, breathing slowly until the doors opened at my floor. I did not think about the way he'd looked at me. On that slight pause before he said, "I know," like he'd already been told I was married, like someone had already told him. I should have asked who. The text came from a number I didn't recognize. "I need to tell you something. It's important. Can we meet?" I stared at it for 20 minutes, then typed, "There's nothing to discuss." His response came immediately. "I know about the pregnancy, Lena. Someone told me. We need to talk." I read it 3 times. Someone told him. My hands went very still. Who? Miriam didn't know Marcus existed. My doctor was protected by confidentiality. Ethan knew about the pregnancy. But Ethan didn't know about Marcus. Did he? The thought arrived cold and complete, the way the worst realizations always do. Not building slowly, but fully formed. When as if it had been waiting just behind a door I hadn't opened yet. What if Ethan knew more than I thought? I met Marcus at a coffee shop across the city, far from anything familiar. He was already there, watching the door when I walked in. The posture of someone braced for a difficult conversation. I sat down without greeting him. "Who told you?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, wrapped his hands around his mug, and then he said the thing that rearranged everything. "Ethan did." The coffee shop sounds went very far away. "That's not possible. You don't know my husband." "I do." He said it carefully. "We went to school together 15 years ago. I lost touch with him completely. When I took the contract here, I had no idea he was even in the city, let alone that you were—" He stopped. "Oh, I didn't know you were his wife until 2 weeks ago, when he called me." "He called you?" "He'd found out somehow that we had met. He wanted to know—" Marcus looked down at the table. "He wanted to know what happened between us." The room was perfectly quiet. "What did you tell him?" He looked at me with something that was almost apology. "The truth," he said. "Lena, I'm sorry. I thought he already knew. I thought you'd told him. I didn't realize—" I stood up. My chair scraped back against the tile. I walked out without my coat. The cold air hit me on the pavement like a hand pressed flat against my chest. Ethan knew. For how long? He was home when I got there. Middle of the afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water. He looked up when I walked in, without surprise. So without urgency, with the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting and has had time to make their peace with the waiting. I set my bag down, stood in the doorway. "How long?" I asked. 3 weeks, he said, give or take. 3 weeks. He had known for 3 weeks. He had come home earlier. He had held my hand across the dinner table. He had said my name in that way, open, undone, electric with something I thought was new, and all of it, every single moment of it, had been something else. "Why didn't you say anything?" He was quiet for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were steady and very tired. "Because I wanted to see what you'd do," he said. "I came home. I showed up. I handed you every possible opening. And I wanted to know, I needed to know, if you would tell me." The silence was enormous. "And?" My voice barely held. "And you didn't." He said it without anger. That was the worst part. Not rage, just a flat, exhausted grief. 6 weeks, Lena. I was right there. And every morning you looked me in the eye and you chose the lie. I opened my mouth, closed it. There was no answer. There genuinely wasn't one. "I know the baby might not be mine," he said. "I've had 3 weeks to sit with that. I've thought about every version of what it means, what I could live with, what I couldn't." He stood and walked to the window, his back to me. "What I keep coming back to isn't that night. People make terrible decisions when they're in pain. I've made my own." He turned around. "Then what I keep coming back to is that you looked at me and every single day and you chose the lie, even when I gave you every reason to choose something else." The room blurred. I blinked it back. "Ethan, I need you to go to your mother's tonight," he said. "I need some time." I picked up my bag. At the door I stopped, searching for some final word that could be both apology and explanation at once. There wasn't one. "I was going to tell you," I said. "I want you to know that. I was going to—" He looked at me for a long moment. "I know you wanted to," he said quietly. "But wanting to isn't the same thing." I stayed at my mother's for 9 days. She asked few questions. She made food I didn't finish. She sat beside me in the evenings without demanding anything from me, which is a form of love I did not deserve and received anyway. On the 7th day, Ethan and I spoke on the phone for an hour. No resolution. Just 2 people learning to speak honestly to each other for what felt, in many ways, like the first time. The DNA test results came on a Thursday morning. Ethan and I sat together in his car in a parking garage. Not at home, not somewhere that meant something, just a neutral, fluorescent-lit space that belonged to neither of us. And he pulled them up on his phone. I watched his face as he read. He went very still. Then he looked up at me. And for the first time in 3 years, I could not read him. The man I had shared a bed with, shared a life with, the man whose face I thought I knew better than my own, was completely unreadable. And in that silence, and I understood something I had not understood before, I had not just risked my marriage with the lie, I had made a stranger of the person I loved most. After a long moment, he put the phone face down on his knee. "Well," he said, and then nothing else for a very long time. The parking garage hummed around us. A car reversed somewhere on the level above. The lights flickered once. Finally, he said, "I don't know what I want yet. I need you to give me time to figure that out." "Okay," I said. "And Lena?" He turned and looked at me fully, directly, with something in his eyes I still can't name entirely. Not forgiveness, not its opposite, something rawer and more honest than either. "Whatever happens between us, this child is not a consequence. Do you understand me? Whatever I decide, the child is not a consequence." I nodded. My throat was too tight for words. He handed me back the phone. I looked at the result, and I wept. Not from relief, not from grief, but from the particular sorrow of a woman who got exactly what she'd asked for and understood too late what she'd paid for it. Some things I have learned about secrets. They do not sit still. You imagine them as fixed, contained, a box locked on a high shelf. But they breathe. They shift their weight in the dark. They grow in proportion to what you are asking someone else to not know. I thought one night could stay in the world it happened in. I thought the borders between lives were stronger than they are. I thought, and this is the one that haunts me, that protecting myself from the truth was the same as protecting the people I loved from it. It is not. The truth has no deadline, but it has a price, and the longer you wait, the higher it goes. Ethan and I are not the same. We will not be the same. Some things, once broken, do not reassemble into their original shape. They become something new instead, something you have to decide whether you want to carry. We are still deciding. What I know is this: I came close to losing everything. Not in the bar on a Tuesday night, not in the hotel room, not even the morning I held that test in my shaking hands. I came closest in every ordinary morning after, every silent breakfast, every opened spreadsheet, every time he said my name like it meant something, and I let him believe he was saying it to someone he fully knew. That was where I nearly lost him. Not in one mistake, in 3 weeks of choosing the wrong thing. One morning at a time. I thought one mistake would stay buried, but some secrets don't disappear. They grow. If this story kept you hooked till the end, then you already know. This is just the beginning. Subscribe for more stories like this.